Ahoy hoy, I return from another undesired hiatus. Since my last upload, I've had the following quote from Stakes cross my mind too many damn times.
Everything repeats over and over again. No one learns anything.
Contrary to Marcy's next line, often it feels like even when the patterns ceaselessly loop on repeat for all to witness, still no one learns anything. How have I been doing?
Like a crazed vermilion crab, limping along the sea floor.
Mentally, I'm around here. Let's swerve the topic into a recurrence that doesn't suck.
How your card fingers feeling?
Cryptozoic Entertainment's new 2025 Card Wars Kickstarter.
Woo! Woo! Whoop, 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 whoop.
Kapow!
Yeah! What?
Has already concluded. But, in a repeat of my last review, I'm spruiking late pledges.
No! Not today! No card war!
Shush it, BMO. I'm bagging the tier named after you for spreading this whizbiz. All the cards in this expansion are brand spanking new to the game, and there's a bunch of them, especially when looking at all those unlocked stretch goals. Adjectitiously, if you missed the boat for the last Card Wars Kickstarter, which assembled all the previously released cards into a convenient package, you can procure the old grip-a-grap you lost out on alongside the new stuff. Personally, what I'm looking forward to the most, besides the playmats, which are so spice, is the new co-op game mode, where you rally with a teammate to take on the Darklands. So if you face rejection, challenging your friends to duel,
you guys want to play some Card Wars?
No.
You may find more luck cajoling your colleagues to engage in jolly cooperation. Don't dally, late pledges will close soon, not sure when exactly, but the deadline approacheth. I suspect they're only still open because finishing this video was a Sisyphean drag that took forever, but I might just be hot-dogging. Whether you're a dweeb, a cool guy, or one of them,
Nerds who do not know how life is outside of the nerd universe.
follow the link in the description to grab this Grizz-as-Nuts Card Wars continuation.
Do it.
Alright, before I proceed to the actual review, I want to spotlight some old news from June of 2024, when it was announced that the Adventure Time IP is expanding with 3 new entries. A preschool-targeted show titled Heyo Bimo, side quests which aims to recapture escapades from Finn's preteen years, and an Adventure Time movie that I am most intrigued by due to the involvement of both Rebecca Sugar and Patrick McHale, props best known for Over the Garden Wall. As far as I'm aware, there's been no further updates on these projects since last year, but let me know if I somehow missed any. Now let's jump into the review. Unlike in the prior 8 episodes of Fionna Cake, the penultimate title card was not preceded by a cold open, and instead appears immediately after the opening theme. There were no clues as to whom the names Casper and Nova might pertain to. I presumed they'd be new multiversal deities, and I'm sure plenty of you had similar guesses. It was rather comical that it took until 85% of the way through the episode named after them for us to find out that they were characters in a future gamebook.
We meet them on their great quests to document and preserve important talismans.
And I'll be discussing more on that later, probably in the next review, because we don't even get confirmation that they're Simon and Betty stand-ins or that it's a semi-biographical gamebook until the season finale.
No do-overs with this book, I guess.
Episode 9 begins with Fionna waking up into what appeared to be an obvious dreamscape. The pastel-like visuals reminded me of the dream sequence that kicked off the first episode of the series, although this current dream lacked the same sort of texture to the backgrounds. However, the presentation from the butterfly to the pan across the landscape was similar to when Cake woke up to the real Land of Ooo in the 3rd episode. This parallel gave me the faintest sliver of doubt about being in the unconscious imagination of the main duo, despite the overly bubbly ambiance being highly evocative of unreality. When things took a dark turn and monsterized Gary Prince showed up, I was internally chanting, please don't be a dream, please don't be a dream, please don't be a dream. I knew in all likelihood it was gonna end up being a dream because things were going from joyous to ghastly in a manner very stereotypical of a nightmare. But damn it, I really wanted Gary to have been actually transmogrified into a blood-curdling creature that wanted to devour his friends. The pun "you do not belong here" and the door sign of Gary's shop saying "beware" were hard to miss. However, I was way too focused on Monster Gary and his confectionery homunculi to scan the titles of the many books on the shelves. Cannibal Cookies, Not So Yummy, Flour or Fear, Brie Ouch, No Thanks, Killer Pies, 2 Sourdough, 1000 Poisonous Macaroons, Mono Fights, Just Mono. While Monster Gary tried to snatch Fionna by the head to eat her, teary-eyed Monster Marshall Lee seemed to have no intent of being hostile. He merely comes out of the shadows and lights a blaze in the sun. Kinda messed up that Fionna and Cake just abandoned sad Monster Marshall to burn. They also don't even make an attempt to save Ellis P. The two flee upon seeing the results of befriending wild squirrels.
My spaghetti!
Point is, you are alive when they start to eat you.
Cake the cat did have frightened reactions to the nightmarish stuff, but it seems like she got a bit of a sick thrill out of the events overall, and we do know it's the real Cake and not a dream stand-in, as the two confirm they shared the dream after waking up.
Yeah. Did you see
Simon in the freezer?
Once out of danger, Cake came to terms with and was very willing to settle down into this new nightmarish realm.
I'll put in a video game. You go make us margaritas. I always wanted to try one of those.
I thought this was a hoot, and totally tracked with her personality. Cake has Jake's laid-back, go-with-the-flow characteristics at maximum output, and more crucially, Cake's desire for a magical universe to call home is many times greater than that of her roommates.
Oh, I told you it shouldn't be up to us to decide.
For Fionna, the stream was reflecting her fears, but Cake preferred this new grotesquely magical version to the old plain version they actually returned to.
It's normal.
Yeah, I know.
I, too, was very bummed it was all a dream. I kept hoping against all odds that it wouldn't be, right up until Simon in the freezer extinguished the tiniest lingering possibility. I feel like there was just such potential for a cheeky and audacious meta-twist where much of the audience is made to assume that this is a nightmare, only to have the realization sink in over time that it's all for real when nobody ends up waking up. I thought that could have been so cool. That would, of course, require for Simon to stop stalling with the crown already, but I thought the ramifications of Redux Ice King appearing in Golbetty's presence, just dropping in, that could itself open up a bunch of new potential and unpredictable story routes. I thought that could have been like ground zero for the season 1 finale to go in any direction. The story, of course, did not go the route of Simon returning to sociopathic ice wizardry, but as a result, we did get some super funny interactions with Lich.
You were to back and through this.
Hey, Lich! What did you do to my spell, huh?
Dr. Petrikov was so concerned at the thought that Fionna and Cake may have failed to return to their world that he kicked the Lich in the patella in frustration. I loved that. Shortly after, Simon attempts to empathize with the Lich, only to be completely ignored, which was also very humorous.
In succeeding, I lost all purpose.
I know what you mean.
Why? Why must this be?
You want it to be one way.
What?
What is the other way?
I want to issue a revision to something I said in my review of the previous episode, Jerry, and I'll go ahead and quote myself. Despite the Lich's wish being overwritten by Jake's wish,
I wish for the extinction of all life for Finn and Jake to go back home to Ooo.
The Lich's original wish nonetheless still created its own branched universe. This was bad and misleading word choice on my part, so to clear things up, my actual view is that Jake's wish created a sister universe, while the Lich's original wish modified the Basil branch Adventure Time started in. As a quick recap for those who haven't seen the show in a while, not every wish will add a new world to the multiverse, as Prismo explained in his titular episode.
Well, as Wishmaster, I grant wishes. And sometimes those wishes require me to create new wish-altered realities.
A new branch in the multiverse seems to occur when a wish needs to mess with the past or alter the fundamental physics of the current reality. Neither of these were necessary for the Lich's original wish, so all organisms in the Land of Ooo and the galaxies beyond die at the start of Season 5. Jake's wish, on the other hand, does create a sister reality where the Lich was revised to wish for something other than the extinction of all life. So Jerry World, or Crap World as Cake calls it, is what's left of the original Adventure Time universe. Even though it ultimately doesn't change much in a cosmological sense, I tend to find this more compelling than the other way around. I have one more revision, actually, cause I also said this in my Jerry video. Turns out that the Lich also felt forsaken by Golb, but that's something to discuss in my next review. Well, that was my intent originally, but over a year ago at this point, I ended up reading way more articles and books on Orphism than was necessary and got kinda lost in the sauce. For those unaware of this episode's link to a sect of ancient Greek religion, the Lich's hard-to-hear murmurings included a section lifted wholesale from an Orphic hymn to Protogonos.
You scattered the dark mist that lay before your eyes.
You!
And flapping your wings, you whirred about and through this world.
Lich! What did you do?
I chased down so many Orphism-adjacent tangents in my attempts to enrich my reading on the Lich's perspective on Golb, and while most of those aren't really worth talking about, I did make some neat and/or wacky discoveries, but that's all going into a separate video. That might come out before my review of Cheers, but it's equally likely I'll end up releasing it after. So, Simon's mind gets warped into where Shermy's is supposed to go. I gotta be honest, on my first watch, I was like, this is just an excuse for us to see Shermy and Beth again. And, I mean, I ain't complaining, I love Shermy and Beth. I loved seeing them take the jet set radio approach to building communism. Looking back after finishing the season, though, it actually makes a lot of sense for Shermy's headspace to be the destination for Simon's consciousness, if the story is gonna go the mind-swapping, unrestricted by time route.
Betty, why did you send me here? And in this body? Why?
Simon needed a companion to bring him to the book, which he himself will go on to inspire the creation of unknowingly, and that companion also needed to guide Simon through the book's contents.
That's not how you...
I know how to read, I have degrees!
Luckily, Beth the Pup Princess makes an excellent candidate to inadvertently help Simon recontextualize his past and acquire a proficient enough level in hindsight and self-awareness to realize what his ex-girlfriend, Golbetty, is trying to tell him. The whole scenario does throw a lot of shade at Dr. Petrikov, though. Besides the professor of archaeology being blind to all of Betty's sacrifices, a topic I will discuss more in my Cheers review, Sherman never once gave Beth reason to suspect her best friend might just possibly be possessed by a sad old man or something.
Okay, Simon. You're not getting out of going to the library by acting weird.
Dr. P's frantic mental state makes his behavior so cockamamie and boneheaded that for the entire time he spends with Beth, she presumes it's just Shermy play-acting another one of his imaginative childish fantasies.
You can zap me to whatever alternate universe you want, but I have free will. Do you hear me, Betty?
I view free will as a self-contradictory concept in a similar manner to omnipotence, and attempts to define it without inherent self-contradiction all basically render the free component of the term meaningless. But this ain't the time for that bland, bottomless can of semantics and semiotics. Instead, I want to gush about how neat the library 1,000 plus years in the future was. The design was inspired by the Gormenghast series by Mervyn Peake, a book trilogy where the decaying castle is as much a character as its inhabitants, which Steve Wolfhard was reading around the time he was working on Fionna Cake. Wolfhard wanted to convey that this massive unearthed building in Shermy and Beth's time was always beneath the library during the series proper, and that was exactly the impression I got before I even saw this concept art. It makes total sense, Steve. The idea came across clear as crystal. The library was a whole bunch of fun overall. The pagelings of the future have become much larger and more ferocious than they were in Finn and Jake's time, and it sure was morbidly wacky to see what's left of Turtle Princess's corpse being inhabited by some kind of defensive robot critter. Pulling a trigger to make a virtual page flip had me snickering, but I'm easily amused when guns are combined with other items. Like back in 2013 when Metal Gear Rising Revengeance came out, I was cracking up at Minuano having a sheath that's basically a gun that fires out his sword.
They went and did it! They made a gun that shoots swords! Maniacs!
Before closing out this review, I'm gonna chat about Scrabby. Can I make fun of how the crabby god auditor passed out from the warp to Golbetty's realm for a way longer time than a regular old human did? Not to mention, after Scarab finally comes to, dude thinks he's hot shit for some reason and figuratively gets high on his own supply.
I'm a professional, and professionals don't hold grudges.
It does appear Scrabby has some resistance to Golb's powers, as after drawing his weapon at Simon, Golbetty unleashed multiple zaps that failed to immobilize him, or the many miniature selves he was split into, for more than a brief moment. Compared to the tetrification that was performed on the Lich, this came off looking pretty weak sauce, and it also felt odd that despite the little buggers continuing their bum rush, Golbetty did not appear to exert any extra effort to keep the mini Scrabbies away from her former lover. I have to assume god auditors are bestowed with some sort of protection to whatever chaotic manipulation Golb can dish out. How else could every last Scarab constituent that can't even break out of a laundry basket, glass jar, or Ziploc bag succeed at shoving itself through Simon's head hole? I really disliked the whole split-up Scarab ordeal, and it was by far the worst part of the episode for me. The design of the mini Scrabbies did not appeal to me whatsoever, nor was I amused by their goofy behavior and silly noises. The worst aspect is how the task of trapping and isolating them all ended up being utterly pointless, because nobody briefed the guy who likes to sleep hidden beneath dirty laundry in other people's homes. When the Collectathon was already lacking interesting character interactions and posed no real danger to the normies involved, the gag of Ellis P setting the god auditor free makes it all feel like a big waste of time. Rounding up the mini Scrabbies came across like busy work for the characters, and unnecessary padding for me as a viewer. I'm only half joking when I say this season could have ended an episode early if instead of sending Simon's mind into the future, Golbetty tossed the Scarab into some practically inaccessible part of existence, or even outside existence, whatever that might mean. Part of the second season could have then included the former god auditor clawing his way back into familiar realities to seek revenge for being fired, and maybe getting some character development along the way. That being said, I actually do quite like how Scrabby ended up as Prismo's roommate, but I'll save further discussion on that topic and many others for my review of Fionna Cake's Season 1 finale. A reminder to go grab that Card Wars expansion if you haven't yet, if it's still available. And as a heads up, I'm going to be posting some of my older Adventure Time reviews on Patreon in the form of compilations, and that's going to be going onto my main channel as well, just so you're aware that some recycled content will be coming up. And beyond that, I'll see ya when I see ya. Catch y'all on the flip.